As you know, tomorrow we will be doing a reversed debate on violence in sport. Groups you have been placed in will be fighting against the opinion you hold. This is to ensure you gain an in-depth understanding of both sides of the argument. For tomorrow's debate, you need to come up with an argument for the perspective you have been assigned. In order to do this, I will be going over the speech model to come up with points for both sides of the argument that you may use in your debate. We'll just quickly recap what speech stands for. S is social, P is political, E is economical, E is environmental, C is cultural, H is historical, and E is ethical. For each point I make, you will find a link in the description below. Use these links to further research the points I am making. Starting with social, from a perspective against violence in sport, we could examine non-contact sports that are supported in New Zealand and how popular they are. We could also examine domestic violence and the increase of off-field violence that occurs during sports games. From the other side of the argument, we could look at the camaraderie that is formed through shared experiences in a risky situation. You could also look at the enjoyment and entertainment that is found through violent sports. There is a certain voyeurism within humans that causes these sports to be the most attractive. Next, let us look at the political side. For people against violence in sport, they might like to look at censorship of sport. While TV shows, video games, and movies have ratings when there is violence involved, anyone can access the violence that is found during sports games. In relation to politics, people for violence in sport could argue that there are penalties involved. There is a judicial system that exists within sports, and that it is not as uncontrolled as it seems. Economically, you may want to look at ACC costs and how much sporting injuries cost the taxpayer. There's also looking at the funding into professional sports that the government gives. You might want to look at the Rugby World Cup from 2011. However, you can look at the flip side of this and examine the amount of revenue that sport brings into the country and also the numerous jobs it creates. Environmentally, you can look at sports clubs and bars where the violence from sport is mirrored during celebrations of sports games. Another environmental aspect that sport has an influence on is the number of physical activity centres in communities. This can be used to promote healthy living. Culturally, you may want to examine the normalization of violence in sport. In opposition to this, you could look at how much of a part sport is to our country's identity. When thinking of New Zealand's identity and relating it to sport, we think of rugby, a sport widely recognised as violent, yet it is valued by so many people in this country. This is something you could explore culturally in defence of violence in sport. When arguing against violence in sport from a historical perspective, looking at how far we've come since sport was created and how far we have developed and become civilized may be an argument you could use. Arguing from a historical perspective for violence in sport, you can examine why sport was created and how it was used as a way to express dominance peacefully, without war. Finally, ethically, the violence existent in sport promotes aggression and ideals of masculinity. These masculinities marginalize femininity and males who don't show this type of character. On the other side, though, how is it right to choose people's freedoms for them? People have the right to be in the sport if that is their decision. To tell them they can't is to take away their freedom. These are just a few examples I've come up with. You may wish to come up with your own for the debate tomorrow. If you do this, it shows a deeper understanding of the subject and how effective you are at being critical.